A new trailer is out for Snow White, and if you thought that Disney was going to salvage this film after all the backlash that it received about the direction it was going in remaking the 1937 classic, you were wrong. And then we got photos of what was going on with Snow White during filming, and we got a look at the 7 dwarves, except they weren't the 7 dwarves anymore. They were the 7 magical creatures, or as I like to refer to them, the 7 magical diversity hires. And if you thought that somehow in this new editing process, Disney was going to be able to make a cut that was less feminist girl boss, I don't think they did, because a clip of the Whistle While You Work song that is featured in Snow White has been released and compared to the 1937 version. Let's listen to it.
Now you wash the dishes.
Now you wash the dishes.
You tidy up the room.
You tidy up the room.
You clean the fireplace.
You clean those cobwebs.
And I'll use the broom.
He'll use the broom.
In an era where nostalgia-driven reboots are becoming increasingly common, Disney's recent attempt to rebrand its iconic Snow White has been nothing short of disastrous. With a budget surpassing $270 million and the potential to reshape the studio's future, the live-action remake of Snow White was poised to be a key player in Disney's strategy to appeal to modern audiences. However, what was intended to be a bold new direction quickly turned into a public relations nightmare. The film, starring Rachel Zegler as Snow White, received a storm of backlash not just for its controversial casting choices, but also for what many perceived as a forced agenda. In this report, we'll dive into the aftermath of Disney's failed Snow White remake and explore how animated satirical shows like Family Guy and South Park have capitalized on Disney's missteps, mocking the company's decisions in ways that continue to resonate with audiences. Could this be the beginning of the end for Disney's reboots? Let's take a closer look.
The live-action Snow White remake is caught in the middle of a culture war. On one end, we have Rachel Zegler, whose casting back in 2021 drew backlash. She later made headlines over her thoughts on the 1937 classic, among other things, including her opposing views on the Israel-Hamas war with her Israeli co-star Gal Gadot. There's also the depiction of the 7 dwarves, which was criticized by this Game of Thrones actor before Disney replaced them with CGI. In response, it looks like the movie's premiere will have a limited red carpet, minus the press. What do you think? Will you be watching?
Disney's ambitious Snow White remake was meant to modernize a beloved classic, but instead it sparked a wave of frustration among both fans and critics. The movie's failure goes beyond box office numbers. It reflects deeper issues within the company's handling of its iconic characters. At the heart of the controversy was the casting of Rachel Zegler, a Latina actress, in the role of Snow White. While Disney emphasized its commitment to diversity and representation, many fans argued that the decision ignored the original description of the character, described as having skin as white as snow. Critics seized on this discrepancy, and the outrage quickly became a flashpoint for larger cultural discussions about the state of Disney's reboots. Furthermore, the film was seen by many as another example of Disney's apparent obsession with pushing woke ideals at the cost of storytelling. Rather than delighting audiences with a fresh take on an old favorite, Disney's Snow White alienated much of its core fan base, raising serious questions about the company's future approach to reboots.
Hey, kid, can you duck down for this picture?
What? Why?
It's our family photo. You're kind of getting in the way.
I'm not ducking down. You duck down. You're getting in my way.
Stop being a brat and duck down.
No way. In fact, I'm standing.
As Disney's Snow White remake stumbled, it didn't take long for animated shows to start taking shots. One of the first and most notable came from Family Guy, a show known for its irreverence and biting satire. In a recent episode, Family Guy took aim at Disney's failure with an incredibly bold scene. Peter Griffin walks through Disneyland looking confused, while a roller coaster in the background bears a sign reading Disney stock, plummeting to the ground. This wasn't just a throwaway joke, it was a sharp commentary on Disney's faltering empire. But Family Guy didn't stop there. In another scene, Peter exclaims, "What is everything?" after being baffled by a confusing mix of characters, calling attention to how the public feels about all the changes happening in entertainment today. With this line, Family Guy captured the frustration of viewers who feel that their beloved media is being redefined without their consent. The show's attack was direct and unapologetic, using humor to expose Disney's reliance on what many see as forced reboots and ideological messages, all while subtly highlighting the company's decline in relevance and credibility.
The last time I had the dream, I was walking down the school hallway. And then I see Butters, and he's like, "Hey Eric, you wanna see what my mom packed me for lunch?" And that's when I start to notice that something's wrong. Everyone I cared about has been systematically replaced. And finally I wanna scream, and I'm like, why are they replacing every single character with someone who is diverse? But then Kenny's like, it's not our fault, it's because of Kathleen Kennedy. But then Kathleen Kennedy says, it, make it more lame. And everyone in town is like, no, please, Kathleen Kennedy, stop ruining everything. But Kathleen Kennedy is all like, put another gay diverse woman in it, make it more lame. And the Disney stock just keeps going down and down and down. And then Bob Iger is all like, no, what's going on with my stocks? No, Kathleen Kennedy. Ah!
No, make it more lame. That is exactly what they're doing. And that is why we hate the diversity, equity, and inclusion casting and writing in movies.
While Family Guy was quick to mock Disney's Snow White, it was South Park that took the critique to an entirely new level. Known for pushing boundaries, South Park didn't just ridicule Disney for its latest reboot. The show mocked the entire corporate structure behind it. In the Pandaverse special, the creators of South Park introduced a version of Kathleen Kennedy, Disney's top executive behind many of the company's reboots, wielding a mythical Pander Stone. This device, according to the show, was used to ensure that every major franchise was injected with diversity, regardless of whether it made sense for the story or characters. Through this satirical approach, South Park highlighted the perceived formulaic nature of Disney's reboot strategy, exposing it as a corporate gimmick rather than a genuine attempt at innovation. The episode was a fever dream of cultural critique, as South Park took aim at Disney's obsession with political correctness, while simultaneously mocking the company's lack of authentic storytelling. It was a brutal yet insightful dissection of Disney's recent creative decisions, and it resonated deeply with audiences who felt the same frustrations.
Some of us think we're really great people, but in the real world we're not. We're terrible people. You run your life in a very selfish way, and you think you're doing good when you're actually not. And at the same time, it's how do democracies turn back into dictatorships? It's happened through history forever and ever.
The ridicule of Disney's recent choices didn't stop at animated satire. It was echoed by none other than George Lucas, the legendary creator of Star Wars. In an unexpected moment during a public panel, Lucas openly criticized the direction that Disney took with the Star Wars franchise after its acquisition. Known for his own creative vision, Lucas expressed disappointment with the way Disney's leadership, particularly Kathleen Kennedy, had handled the legacy of Star Wars. His remarks came as a surprising and significant blow to the company, as Lucas had long been a revered figure in the world of entertainment. While fans of the Star Wars universe have long voiced their discontent with the sequels, hearing criticism directly from Lucas himself was a moment of cultural significance. It underscored just how far Disney had strayed from the values that made the franchise iconic, and it added fuel to the growing narrative that Disney's current approach to storytelling and brand management was fundamentally flawed. For many, it was a moment that cemented the notion that Disney had lost its way.
Things just went from bad to worse for Snow White, and it's shaping up to become one of the biggest bombs of all time. Okay, so Disney's live-action Snow White opened in theaters last week, and it made $42 million domestic opening weekend. But then this past weekend, it only made $14.2 million domestic, meaning it fell off by a whopping 66%. And this is really bad news for Disney because Snow White's budget was absurdly high. According to Forbes, a Disney financial disclosure revealed that Snow White's budget was $270 million. But then the New York Times reported last week that Snow White actually cost $80 million more than what Disney claimed. Conventional Hollywood wisdom states that movies need to gross 2 times their budget at the box office to turn a profit because of the cut movie theaters take, as well as marketing and other ancillary costs. Which means Snow White would have to get to about $700 million in theaters, and so far it's made $143 million total worldwide. And so if Snow White doesn't grow legs, that means it could possibly lose hundreds of millions of dollars in theaters.
Behind all the controversy and cultural criticism, there's a much more tangible problem: Disney's financial performance. Despite the massive investment in Snow White, the film barely made $184 million globally, a far cry from the $270 million it cost to produce. This failure came on the heels of the Little Mermaid remake, which also underperformed, losing Disney around $25 million. The numbers painted a grim picture for Disney's future in the realm of live-action reboots. For a company that has historically been known for its storytelling and cinematic innovation, these financial losses were a huge blow. Insiders within the company have admitted that there's now a palpable sense of panic behind the scenes, as Disney grapples with the reality that its reboots may not be the cash cows they once hoped for. The company's strategy of reimagining its classics for a new generation seems to be backfiring, as audiences are increasingly turned off by what they see as shallow and overly politicized versions of beloved films. With more expensive projects like the live-action Tangled remake on the horizon, Disney is facing the difficult question of whether it can regain its former glory, or if the era of expensive reboots is coming to an end. While Disney's struggles are rooted in a variety of factors, one name has become synonymous with its most recent failures. Rachel Zegler, the young actress who was cast as Snow White, found herself at the center of an online firestorm long before the film even hit theaters. The controversy began with her casting, which many saw as a departure from the original character's description. While Disney defended the decision as a step toward greater diversity, the backlash was immediate and intense. Fans of the original Snow White were upset by what they perceived as an erosion of the character's identity, while others criticized the movie for focusing more on modern representation than on delivering a compelling story. Zegler's attempts to defend herself on social media only added fuel to the fire. In a now infamous TikTok, she addressed the criticism by calling out those who questioned her casting, doubling down on the importance of modern representation. However, her comments about the original Snow White film only added to the ire of critics, as Zegler referred to it as weird and outdated, while also dismissing the prince as a red flag. The backlash reached a new level when she posted a now infamous Instagram story walking into an empty theater, flowers in hand, at what was supposed to be a promotional event for her film. The awkwardly sparse audience served as a stark metaphor for the lack of excitement surrounding the movie, and the image quickly became a meme, further tarnishing Disney's attempt to breathe new life into its classics. Rachel Zegler's involvement in the Snow White remake wasn't just controversial for her casting, it was also exacerbated by her political stances. Zegler, who had publicly supported Palestine during the ongoing Israel-Gaza conflict, became a target of online criticism. The controversy reached its peak when Zegler's co-star Gal Gadot, who was famously pro-Israel, became entangled in the issue. The public clash between the two actresses, combined with Zegler's outspoken views, led to a cultural divide that didn't just affect the movie, it escalated into a global political debate. Things took an even darker turn when Lebanon officially banned the film from being shown in theaters, not because of Zegler, but because of Gadot's controversial political affiliations. As a result, the Snow White remake was effectively blacklisted in a major market, adding financial insult to an already beleaguered project. The political dimensions of the film's controversy revealed just how polarizing Disney's reboot strategy had become. What was intended to be a modernized fairy tale turned into a political battleground, further alienating fans who were already unhappy with the direction Disney was taking.
Disney got too woke, got ratioed online, make the clock reverse, the classics were just fine, were just fine. Well guys, it seems like Disney might be finally learning their lesson. They are stopping indefinitely the development of a live-action Tangled movie. Now Disney is not coming forward and saying exactly why this Tangled live-action remake has been halted, but The Hollywood Reporter writes this. The pause occurs in the wake of the rather underwhelming release of Disney's latest live-action adaptation, Snow White. They flopped so hard in Snow White, trying to be brazen and rewrite history and representative of its modern audience, and we all saw how that went. So maybe, if Tangled ever gets picked back up off the cutting room floor, you stick to what Tangled actually is.
As Snow White continues to limp through its disastrous box office run, Disney is now facing even greater pressure regarding its next big budget project, the live-action remake of Tangled. Initially seen as a promising venture, this remake was expected to be one of the most expensive live-action projects Disney had ever undertaken, with reports suggesting the total cost could exceed $500 million when factoring in production and marketing. But after the massive financial losses from Snow White and The Little Mermaid, many are questioning whether Disney should proceed with this gamble. Fans have already voiced their skepticism online, arguing that Disney's reputation for reboots is tarnished beyond repair. Disney's recent remake failures have left many disillusioned with the company's approach, and with Tangled's high cost, Disney can't afford another flop. What makes the situation even more complicated is the fact that the Tangled franchise, despite being one of the studio's most expensive animated films, didn't perform as well as Disney had hoped. It grossed $592 million against a budget of $260 million, but after factoring in marketing, ticket splits, and other costs, Disney actually lost money. Now, with Snow White's failure hanging over the company, there is palpable concern that Tangled could face a similar fate, with audiences continuing to reject Disney's reboot-heavy strategy.
Did you know that everybody kinda hates Family Guy? So despite being one of the most popular animated series in the entire world, you'd be surprised to find out that almost every other show kinda despises Family Guy. The biggest known haters are South Park creators themselves, Matt and Trey, with one of their most iconic episodes having a hilarious jab at the comedy and writing of Family Guy. So this happens in the two-part series called Cartoon Wars, where in the first episode, South Park makes a joke saying that Family Guy's writing consists of manatees collecting balls that have writing on them and putting them into a machine.
A perfect Family Guy joke. I can see it now.
Peter, you didn't do the laundry today.
You think that's bad? Remember the time I won a date to Mexico with Gary Coleman?
¿Qué pasa, señores? What you talking about, Willis?
Funnily enough, after that episode aired, the Simpsons crew actually went ahead and sent flowers to the South Park studio as a sign of appreciation for what South Park did. Now let me hear it from you. Do you think Family Guy deserves the hate for its lazy writing? Let me know.
Despite Family Guy and South Park having already taken significant shots at Disney's latest reboots, the two animated heavyweights show no signs of slowing down. Family Guy has long been known for its boundary-pushing humor, but it's been especially relentless in its takedowns of Disney's recent choices. If the Snow White parody wasn't enough, the show has continued to lampoon Disney's cultural obsessions, leaning into the public's growing dissatisfaction with the company. And then there's South Park. After dissecting Disney's corporate structure and the problematic elements of its reboots, the show took it even further with its Pandaverse special. South Park's relentless mockery of Disney's pandering diversity agenda resonated strongly with audiences, offering a biting critique of the company's formulaic approach. With both shows showing no hesitation to take direct aim at Disney, it's clear that the company's leadership and its reboots will continue to be a target for humor and outrage. While some might argue that these shows are simply doing their job as satirical commentators, the fact that they're consistently targeting Disney's most iconic properties signals a deeper issue. When the likes of Family Guy and South Park are openly mocking a once untouchable cultural institution, it suggests that Disney's credibility is rapidly diminishing. Disney, once the undisputed leader in family entertainment and storytelling, now finds itself in a crisis of its own making. The company's attempts to reboot and reimagine its iconic films, such as Snow White, have failed to resonate with audiences, leaving the studio grappling with mounting financial losses and a growing backlash. What started as a push for modern relevance has turned into a cultural and commercial disaster, with animated shows like Family Guy and South Park leading the charge in mocking Disney's direction. From forced diversity agendas to box office bombs, Disney's strategy is increasingly seen as hollow and formulaic. The failure of Snow White has cast a long shadow over the studio, and as Disney presses forward with another high-risk project in the form of the Tangled remake, the company faces a difficult question. Can it ever return to the storytelling magic that once defined it? As the Simpsons prepare to take their turn at the Disney roast, it's becoming increasingly clear that Disney's struggles are far from over. In an era where nostalgia is no longer enough to sustain cultural relevance, Disney finds itself at a crossroads. Will it find a way to regain the trust of its audience, or will it become the next casualty of the reboot era?